Dr. Kesthera stepped off the transport ship and onto Research Station Omega-7. Her four legs moved carefully across the metal floor. The station felt cold and empty compared to her homeworld. She carried her research equipment in her lower arms while her upper arms held her personal belongings. The station commander, a tall, blue-skinned Altarian, greeted her at the docking bay. "Welcome, Doctor. We are honored to have such a famous scientist here." Kesthera's large eyes blinked slowly. "Thank you, Commander. I hope my research will help us understand the nature of warfare better." She had spent 30 years studying how different species fought. The Krillians fought like machines, cold and calculating. The Zephyrians fought for honor, following strict rules even in battle. The Sector fought as one mind, thousands of bodies moving together. Each species had their own way of war, their own reasons for fighting. But humans were different. The reports about them made no sense. They seemed to change during battle, becoming something else entirely. Some called it battle fury. But Kesthera thought that was just stories. No species could truly transform like that. The commander showed her to her laboratory. "The humans will arrive tomorrow," he said. 12 Marines and their captain. They will protect us from Vorthak raids. Kesthera had heard of the Vorthak. They were raiders who attacked peaceful colonies. They took prisoners for their horrible experiments. The thought made her fur stand up. "Why humans?" she asked. Surely other species would be better suited for protection. The commander's expression grew serious. "You have not seen humans fight, Doctor. They are different from other warriors. That is why the Confederation sends them to the most dangerous places." That night, Kesthera prepared her equipment. She had brain scanners, stress monitors, and behavior analysis computers. She would finally solve the mystery of human psychology. Her people, the Meridians, had evolved from peaceful plant eaters. Violence confused them. They could not understand why any species would choose to fight when they could run away. The next morning, the human transport arrived. Kesthera watched from the observation deck as 12 soldiers walked into the station. They looked so ordinary. They were smaller than most warrior species. They had no natural weapons like claws or fangs. Their skin looked soft and weak. The captain was a woman with short black hair and kind eyes. She introduced herself to the station crew. "I'm Captain Sarah Chen. These are my Marines. We're here to keep you safe." She seemed so normal. She smiled and shook hands with everyone. She even brought Kesthera a cup of something called coffee. "I heard you study warrior psychology," Chen said, sitting across from Kesthera in the mess hall. "That must be fascinating work." "Yes, it is," Kesthera replied, sipping the strange hot liquid. It tasted bitter, but somehow pleasant. "I have studied many species, but humans remain a mystery to me." Chen laughed. "We're mysteries to ourselves sometimes. What do you want to know?" "The reports say humans can enter something called battle fury. They say you become different during combat." "Is this true?" Chen's smile faded slightly. "We fight when we have to. We protect what matters to us, but do you change? Do you become something else?" The captain was quiet for a moment. "Doctor, I hope you never have to find out." Over the next few days, Kesthera observed the Marines. They were nothing like the warriors she had studied before. Sergeant Rodriguez showed pictures of his daughter taking her first steps. Private Liu taught the station's children how to fold paper into flowers and birds. Corporal Okafor wrote poetry in the evening. They seemed more like artists and teachers than soldiers. They laughed together, told jokes, and shared stories about their homes. They helped the station crew with repairs and played games with the children. "I don't understand," Kesthera told Chen one evening. "You and your Marines seem so peaceful. How can you be effective warriors?" Chen looked out at the stars through the observation window. "Doctor, most warrior species fight because they love fighting. Humans are different. We fight because we love what we're protecting." "What do you mean?" "When a Krillian fights, they calculate the best way to win. When a Zephyrian fights, they seek honor and glory. When humans fight," Chen paused. "When humans fight, we're not thinking about winning or losing. We're thinking about the people who need us to come home." Kesthera's brain scanners showed something strange in the human readings. All the Marines had unusual neural pathways in their brains. These pathways seemed inactive, like they were sleeping. She had never seen anything like them. "Captain, my scans show unusual brain patterns in your people. There are neural pathways that don't match any known psychology." Chen's expression grew serious. "Those are probably best left alone, Doctor. But for science—" "Doctor," Chen interrupted gently but firmly. "You study warriors, right? Tell me, what makes a warrior dangerous? Kesithera thought carefully. Training, weapons, tactics, physical strength. Those help, Chen agreed. But the most dangerous warrior is one who has something to lose. Someone who will do anything to protect what they love. That seems illogical. Emotional attachment should make a warrior weaker, not stronger. Chen smiled sadly. You've never seen a human parent protecting their child, have you? Before Kesithera could ask what she meant, alarms began blaring throughout the station. The commander's voice echoed through the speakers. All personnel to emergency stations. Long-range sensors detect a large Vorthak fleet heading this way. The change in the humans was immediate. Their casual, friendly demeanor vanished in seconds. They moved with sudden purpose, checking weapons and equipment. Their eyes became hard and focused. Chen was no longer the kind woman who brought coffee. She stood straighter, her voice carrying new authority. Rodriguez, get me a tactical assessment. Liu, check our defensive systems. Okafor, prepare evacuation routes for civilians. Where are they heading? Chen asked the commander. The Altarian's face was pale with fear. New Geneva colony. 50,000 civilians, mostly families. Kesithera watched in fascination as something changed in the Marines' faces. Rodriguez's jaw tightened. Liu's gentle hands became fists. Okafor stopped writing poetry and started calculating distances and weapons ranges. My daughter's school group is visiting New Geneva this week, Rodriguez said quietly. The words seemed to electrify the other Marines. Kesithera's instruments detected massive spikes in their brain activity. Those sleeping neural pathways began to wake up. Chen's voice was still calm, but something underneath it made Kesithera's prey instincts scream danger. How long until they reach the colony? 18 hours, the commander replied. Then we have 18 hours to stop them. Captain, the commander said desperately, there are over 300 Vorthak ships. We have one research station with minimal defenses. It's impossible. Chen looked at her Marines. They looked back at her. Some silent communication passed between them. Commander, Chen said quietly, you don't understand humans very well, do you? What do you mean? Chen's smile was nothing like the warm expression Kesithera had seen before. It was cold and sharp and terrifying. We don't know how to give up when children are in danger. As Kesithera watched, the humans began to change. It wasn't physical, but something deeper. The sleeping parts of their brains were waking up, and her instruments couldn't understand what they were becoming. She realized with growing fear that she was about to witness something that would change everything she thought she knew about war, about humanity, and about the nature of violence itself. The humans were no longer the friendly people she had been studying. They were becoming something else entirely, and that transformation terrified her more than any warrior she had ever observed. The hours that followed the alarm changed everything for Dr. Kesithera. She watched the humans work with growing amazement and fear. They moved like a machine made of 12 parts, each knowing exactly what the others were doing without speaking. Captain Chen stood in the command center, studying star maps and tactical displays. Her Marines worked around the station, turning peaceful research equipment into weapons of war. They did not panic. They did not argue. They simply worked with terrible efficiency. Kesithera followed them with her instruments, recording everything. The brain scans showed activity she had never seen before. The humans were thinking faster, processing information at incredible speeds. Their stress levels should have been off the charts, but instead they seemed perfectly calm. How are you so calm? She asked Sergeant Rodriguez as he modified a mining laser. Rodriguez didn't look up from his work. His hands moved with steady precision, rewiring complex electronics. Panic doesn't help anyone, Doc. My little girl is depending on me to do my job. But the odds are impossible. 300 ships against one station. Numbers don't matter, Rodriguez replied. What matters is that they picked the wrong target. Private Liu was in the hydroponics bay doing something with the life support systems. Kesithera's instruments showed Liu's brain working at levels that should have caused seizures. But Liu looked perfectly normal except for her eyes. They had become cold and calculating. What are you doing? Kesithera asked, making the air dangerous for anyone who isn't supposed to be breathing it. Liu said simply, the Vorthak need oxygen just like we do, but they're not going to get clean air if they board this station. Liu's voice was still gentle, but her words sent chills through Kesithera. This was the same woman who taught children origami. Now she was calmly planning to suffocate invaders. Corporal Okafor was in the ammunition storage creating explosive devices from mining equipment. He hummed while he worked, like he was composing music instead of building bombs. "Are you afraid?" Kesithara asked him. Okafor looked up and smiled. It was a warm smile, but his eyes were the eyes of a predator. "Fear is for people who have something to lose, Doctor. We already lost everything the moment the Vorthak decided to attack New Geneva. I don't understand. Those 50,000 people on New Geneva, they're not strangers to us. They're part of our family. When you threaten family..." Okafor went back to his work. "Well, you'll see." Kesthera returned to the command center where Chen was planning their defense. The captain had spread holographic displays showing the station and the surrounding space. She moved pieces around like playing a game, but Kesithara could see the deadly intelligence behind every move. "Captain, may I ask you something?" Chen nodded without looking away from the displays. "My scans show that your people's brains are working at impossible levels. You should be exhausted, confused, making mistakes. Instead, you all seem more focused than ever. How is this possible?" Chen finally looked at her. For a moment, Kesithara saw something ancient and dangerous in the human's eyes, something that had been sleeping but was now fully awake. "Doctor, you study warriors from species that evolved to fight. Krillians were born to calculate and destroy. Zephyrians were born to seek honor in battle. But humans," Chen paused, "humans evolved to survive, to protect our young, to do whatever it takes to keep our families alive. But evolution doesn't work that way. You can't just become more intelligent when threatened." Chen smiled, and the expression was terrifying. "Can't we? Doctor, what do you think happens to a species that survives ice ages, plagues, natural disasters, and every predator on their home world? What happens to the ones who live through all of that?" Kesithara felt a chill run through her fur. "They become very good at surviving." "Exactly. And Doctor, the Vorthak just threatened our cubs. The way Chen said it made it sound like the most dangerous thing anyone could do." Kesithara's instruments detected something new in the human brain patterns. The dormant neural pathways weren't just active now. They were blazing with energy. "What are those pathways?" she asked. "What do they do?" Chen was quiet for a long moment. "They're what we call our deep programming. Instincts buried so far down that most humans never access them. They're what our ancestors used when they had to fight cave bears with pointed sticks, when they had to protect their children from things that could eat them. And now they're awake again." Reports came in every hour about the Vorthak fleet. They were moving fast, heading straight for New Geneva. Intelligence said they weren't planning to kill the colonists quickly. The Vorthak wanted them alive for their experiments. They would study human biology, test human pain responses, see how long humans could survive without sleep, food, or hope. Each report made the Marines more focused, more dangerous. Kesithara watched Rodriguez work on the mining lasers. His daughter was on New Geneva, visiting with her school class. The thought of Vorthak scientists experimenting on children made Rodriguez's hands shake with barely controlled rage. But it wasn't wild rage. It was cold, focused anger that made him work faster and smarter. He was turning industrial equipment into weapons that shouldn't have been possible. The mining lasers weren't designed for combat. But Rodriguez was changing that. Liu had finished with the life support systems. Now the station could produce different types of air in different sections. Air that would be fine for humans but deadly for Vorthak. She had also rigged the gravity generators to create areas where intruders would be crushed or thrown around like toys. Okafor had created enough explosives to turn the station into a death trap. But they weren't random bombs. Each one was carefully placed to channel explosions, to create killing fields, to make every corridor a nightmare for invaders. "You're not just defending," Kesithara realized. "You're setting a trap," Chen nodded. "The Vorthak think they're attacking a helpless research station. They're expecting easy prey. What are you giving them instead?" Chen's smile was sharp as a blade. "A lesson about what happens when you threaten human children." As the hours passed, Kesithara noticed other changes in the humans. They ate very little but seemed to have endless energy. They didn't sleep, but showed no signs of fatigue. They spoke less and less but understood each other perfectly. Most disturbing of all, they seemed to be enjoying themselves. Not the way Zephyrians enjoyed honorable combat, or the way Krillians enjoyed efficient destruction. The humans were enjoying the hunt. They were predators preparing for prey, and they were happy about it. "Captain," the station commander announced, "the Vorthak fleet will arrive in 6 hours." Chen looked at her Marines. They looked back at her. Again, that silent communication passed between them. "Good," Chen said simply. The word carried so much menace that Kesithara's instruments detected fear responses from every non-human on the station. Even the brave Altarian commander stepped back. "Doctor," Chen said to Kesithara, "you wanted to study human psychology in combat. You're about to get the best education of your career. Are you ready?" Kesithara asked. Chen's laugh was soft and terrible. "Doctor, we've been ready for this fight since our species learned to walk upright. The Vorthak just don't know it yet." Kesithara realized that she was about to witness something unprecedented. Not just a battle, but the awakening of something primal and deadly that had been sleeping in human genetics for thousands of years. The humans weren't just soldiers anymore. They had become something older and more dangerous, something that had kept humanity alive through ages of predators and darkness, and in a few hours 300 Vorthak ships would learn what that something could do. The moment arrived with the soft ping of a sensor alert. The Vorthak fleet had dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. 312 ships ranging from massive dreadnoughts to fast attack cruisers. On the tactical display, they looked like a swarm of angry insects descending on the tiny research station. Dr. Kesithara watched the humans receive this news. What she saw defied everything she thought she knew about psychology and biology. The change was instant and complete. One moment, Captain Chen was studying tactical displays with the focused attention of a professional soldier. The next moment, something fundamental shifted inside her. Her posture changed, becoming more predatory. Her eyes grew cold and calculating. When she spoke, her voice carried undertones that made every non-human on the station feel like prey. "Range to target?" she asked. 4 hours at their current speed," the station commander replied, his voice shaking. "Good. That gives us time to finish preparations." But Chen's voice was different now. It carried authority that went beyond military rank. It was the voice of an apex predator that had decided to hunt. Kesithara's instruments went wild. The neural pathways in Chen's brain weren't just active anymore. They were blazing with energy her equipment could barely measure. The readings showed brain activity that should have been impossible for any biological creature. The other Marines showed the same transformation. Sergeant Rodriguez stopped talking about his daughter and started talking about kill zones and firing solutions. His hands worked with mechanical precision, but his eyes held a fury that burned cold and steady. Private Liu no longer seemed like the gentle woman who taught children origami. She moved through the station like a ghost, checking her traps and modifications with deadly efficiency. When she spoke, it was only to confirm that her death traps were ready. Corporal Okafor had stopped writing poetry. Instead, he recited tactical information like verses of a war song. His explosives were placed with artistic precision, each one positioned to create maximum destruction for anyone foolish enough to invade his territory. "What's happening to them?" Kesithara asked the station's medical officer, a Centaurian doctor named Helix. "I don't know," Helix admitted, staring at his medical scanners. "Their brain activity is off the charts. Their stress hormones should be killing them, but instead they seem to be getting stronger. It's like they're becoming different species." "No," said a quiet voice behind them. They turned to see Chen standing in the doorway. "We're becoming what we've always been underneath." Chen's presence filled the room with barely contained violence. Kesithara's prey instinct screamed at her to run, to hide, to get as far away as possible from this predator. "I don't understand," Kesithara managed to say. "Doctor, you study warriors, but you've never studied humans at war. Real war. The kind where everything you love is about to die unless you stop it." Chen moved closer, and both Kesithara and Helix stepped back automatically. "Your Krillians fight with logic. Your Zephyrians fight for honor. But humans? We fight with everything we are. Every instinct, every skill, every brutal lesson our species learned over millions of years of surviving on a death world." "Death world?" Helix asked. Chen's smile was terrifying. "Earth, Doctor. A planet where everything wants to kill you. Predators with claws and fangs. Diseases that can wipe out entire populations. Weather that can freeze or burn you to death. Earthquakes, volcanoes, floods, droughts." She paused, her cold eyes fixed on them. "And somehow soft little humans with no natural weapons survived all of that. Want to know how?" Neither alien answered. They were too afraid to speak. "We became the most dangerous predators on the planet. We learned to hunt in packs. We learned to make tools that could kill anything. We learned to think our way out of any trap. And most importantly, We learned to become absolutely ruthless when our families were threatened. Chen turned to look at the tactical display showing the approaching Vorthak fleet. Those ships out there? They think they're hunting helpless prey. They have no idea what they're actually about to face. The next few hours passed in a haze of preparation and anticipation. The humans worked with inhuman efficiency, making final adjustments to their traps and weapons. They barely spoke, but they moved together like parts of a single organism. Kesthera tried to analyze what she was seeing, but her instruments couldn't make sense of the readings. The humans were operating on multiple levels of consciousness simultaneously. They were thinking tactically, but also accessing deeper, more primitive parts of their minds. It's like they're running different programs at the same time, she told Helix. What do you mean? Part of their brains is still human, calculating, planning, using technology. But another part has become something else, something that thinks like a predator from their evolutionary past. The Vorthak fleet entered the outer system and began accelerating toward the research station. Their formation was perfect, their approach textbook military doctrine. They had conquered dozens of species using these same tactics, but as they drew closer, strange things began happening to their fleet. The first sign was their communications. The Vorthak used quantum encryption that should have been unbreakable, but somehow the humans were not only listening to their transmissions, they were understanding their tactical plans in real time. How are they doing that? The station commander asked. Rodriguez looked up from his modified mining laser. Liu used to work in intelligence. She's really good at breaking codes. But Vorthak encryption is impossible to crack without massive computational power. Rodriguez's smile was sharp. Doc, when humans get angry enough, we become really good at doing impossible things. The second sign was the Vorthak fleet's growing confusion. Their sensors were detecting massive energy signatures from the research station, but the readings made no sense. According to their instruments, the tiny station was somehow generating power levels that should have required a battleship. They don't understand what they're seeing, Chen said, watching their confused communications. Good, fear makes prey stupid. Prey? Kesthera repeated. Chen looked at her with eyes that belonged to something that had never been prey to anyone. Doctor, the Vorthak have been predators for so long, they've forgotten what it's like to be hunted. They're about to remember. The fleet began its final approach, 300 ships against one small research station. By every calculation, the station should be destroyed in minutes. Instead, Kesthera watched the humans take their positions and prepare to teach the galaxy a lesson about what happens when you threaten their young. The transformation was complete. The friendly, artistic, gentle humans she had studied were gone. In their place stood something that had crawled out of humanity's darkest evolutionary memories, something that remembered how to hunt the hunters. And for the first time in her life, Kesthera understood true terror. The first Vorthak ships opened fire at maximum range, sending streams of plasma toward the research station. Standard doctrine called for overwhelming firepower to break enemy defenses quickly. They expected the station to crumble under the assault. Instead, something impossible happened. The station didn't just survive the barrage, it seemed to absorb the energy and redirect it. What the Vorthak didn't know was that Sergeant Rodriguez had spent the last 18 hours turning every piece of equipment on the station into a weapon. The mining lasers that once carved through asteroids now carved through ship hulls. The fusion reactors that powered research equipment now powered weapons that shouldn't have existed. Dr. Kesthera watched in amazement as Rodriguez operated his improvised weapons. His hands moved across controls with inhuman speed and precision. His brain patterns showed activity that should have been impossible. He was processing targeting data, power management, and tactical analysis simultaneously. Target the command ships first, Captain Chen ordered. Her voice calm and cold. Rodriguez's modified mining laser reached out across space and touched a Vorthak dreadnought. The beam should have been too weak to damage a ship that size. Instead, it cut through the dreadnought's armor like paper, hitting the ship's main reactor. The explosion lit up space like a new star. How? The station commander whispered. Rodriguez used to be an engineer on mining ships, Chen replied. He knows exactly how much energy it takes to crack open big rocks. Ships aren't that different from rocks. The Vorthak fleet hesitated. They had just lost a dreadnought to a research station. Their tactical computers couldn't explain what they had seen. That hesitation was exactly what Chen had been waiting for. Liu, now, she ordered. Private Liu activated her modifications to the station's communication array. Instead of sending normal radio signals, the array now broadcasted something that interfered with Vorthak neural implants. The cybernetic enhancements that made Vorthak warriors so effective suddenly became liabilities. Across the fleet, Vorthak crew members collapsed as their enhanced senses overloaded. Their tactical coordination broke down as communication implants failed. Ships began drifting out of formation as navigation systems went haywire. Impossible, the station commander breathed. Those implants are hardened against all known electromagnetic warfare. Liu's smile was sharp and predatory. Good thing humans specialize in doing things that are supposed to be impossible. But the Vorthak were experienced warriors. They adapted quickly, switching to backup systems and manual controls. The fleet regrouped and resumed its attack with renewed fury. That was when Corporal Okafor joined the fight. The Vorthak sent boarding pods toward the station, planning to capture it and use the crew as hostages. Standard tactics that had worked against dozens of other species. The first boarding pod breached the station's hull and disgorged 20 Vorthak Marines. They advanced through the corridors with military precision, expecting to find terrified researchers and minimal security. Instead, they found a nightmare. Okafor had turned every corridor into a death trap. The walls exploded without warning, filling the air with deadly shrapnel. The floors gave way, dropping invaders into spaces where the artificial gravity had been set to crush them. The ceiling turrets that once guided maintenance, robots now fired streams of superheated plasma. But worse than the traps was Okafor himself. The man who wrote poetry about beauty and love had become something that belonged in the darkest human myths. He moved through the corridors like death itself, appearing from shadows to strike down intruders before vanishing again. Kesithara watched through security cameras as Okafor hunted the Vorthak Marines. He used weapons that he had improvised from maintenance tools. He set ambushes that showed an understanding of psychology and fear that went beyond military training. He's not just killing them, she realized with horror. He's terrorizing them. Fear is a weapon too, Chen said without emotion. Scared enemies make mistakes. More boarding pods breached the station, but the results were the same. The Vorthak Marines found themselves trapped in a maze designed by someone who understood exactly how to break the minds of professional soldiers. Within an hour, the mighty Vorthak fleet was in chaos. They had lost 17 ships to weapons that shouldn't have existed. Their boarding parties were being systematically destroyed by traps and tactics that made no sense. Their electronic systems were failing in ways their engineers couldn't explain. And through it all, 12 humans held a research station against odds that should have been impossible. But Kesithara could see the cost. Her instruments showed that the humans were pushing their bodies and minds beyond normal limits. They should have collapsed hours ago from exhaustion and stress. Instead, they seemed to be getting stronger. How are they doing this? She asked the medical officer. I don't know, Helix replied, staring at his readings in disbelief. They're running on something beyond normal biology. Their bodies are producing chemicals I've never seen before. What kind of chemicals? The kind that shut off pain, eliminate fatigue, and enhance cognitive function far beyond normal limits. It's like they have a biological override system that activates during extreme danger. Chen overheard their conversation. Every human has it, Doctor. We call it different things. Adrenaline rush, second wind, mother's strength. But it's really the same thing. The ability to exceed our normal limits when the people we love are in danger. On the tactical display, the Vorthak fleet was pulling back, trying to regroup. They had come expecting easy prey and found apex predators instead. But Chen wasn't finished with them. They hurt our people, she said quietly. They threatened our children. That requires an answer. She turned to Rodriguez. Can you reach their flagship from here? Rodriguez studied his modified weapon systems. It's at extreme range, but yeah, I can touch it. Do it. The mining laser reached across space one more time. This time it didn't destroy the Vorthak flagship, it disabled it. The beam surgically removed the ship's weapons and engines, leaving it helpless but intact. Why didn't you destroy it? The station commander asked. Chen's smile was terrible to see. Because I want them to go home. I want them to tell their people what happened here. I want every Vorthak in the galaxy to know what happens when you threaten human children. The Vorthak fleet retreated in disorder, leaving behind 23 destroyed ships and hundreds of dead Marines. They had learned a lesson that would be passed down through their species for generations. But as Kesethera watched the humans begin to relax, she realized that the victory had come at a price. The gentle people she had studied were gone, replaced by something that had crawled out of humanity's evolutionary past, and the most terrifying part was that they could choose to become human again. That level of control over such devastating fury challenged everything she thought. She knew about the nature of consciousness and civilization. The humans had won, but Kesethera wasn't sure the galaxy was ready for what they had become. The silence after battle was more terrifying than the fighting had been. Dr. Kesethera stood in the observation deck, looking out at the debris field where 23 Vorthak ships had died. Pieces of metal and plastic drifted in the darkness, all that remained of thousands of warriors who had thought they were hunting easy prey. Behind her, the 12 humans sat in the station's common area. They were human again, or trying to be, but Kesethera could see the cost of what they had done written in their faces. Sergeant Rodriguez stared at his hands like they belonged to someone else. These were the same hands that had held pictures of his daughter, that had gently repaired delicate equipment. Now they had operated weapons that carved through starships like they were made of paper. "The kids on New Geneva are safe," he said quietly. "Got the confirmation an hour ago. The school group made it to the shelters in time." His voice was steady, but Kesethera's instruments detected massive stress responses in his brain. The neural pathways that had blazed with fury during the battle were slowly shutting down, but the process was clearly painful. Private Liu sat by herself in the corner, folding paper cranes with shaking fingers. Each fold was perfect, precise, but her hands trembled with aftershocks from the transformation she had undergone. The woman who had turned the station's life support into a weapon of war was trying to remember how to create beauty instead of death. "I used to make these for the children," she whispered to herself. "Pretty things. Peaceful things." But her eyes still held echoes of the predator she had become. Kesethera could see her mental struggle to push that darkness back down into the depths of her mind where it belonged. Corporal Okafor was writing again, but the poetry that flowed from his pen was dark and violent. He would start a verse about flowers or sunlight, then the words would twist into descriptions of death and hunting. After a few lines, he would crumple the paper and start over. "I can't make it stop," he told Kesethera when she approached him. "The words keep coming out wrong." "What words?" "Beautiful words. I want to write about life and love and hope. But all that comes out is—" He gestured at the pile of crumpled papers. "This." Kesethera looked at one of the discarded verses. It was about tracking prey through corridors, about the satisfaction of a perfect ambush. The language was beautiful, but the subject matter was horrifying. "How long will this last?" she asked. Okafor shrugged. "Until the hunter goes back to sleep, I guess. Could be days, could be weeks. We all process it differently." Captain Chen found Kesethera in her laboratory several hours later. The captain looked tired in a way that went beyond physical exhaustion. She moved carefully, like she was afraid her body might betray her and return to its predatory state. "How are you holding up, Doctor?" Kesethera looked at her readouts and recordings. 30 years of research into warrior psychology, and everything she thought she knew had been proven wrong in a single day. "I don't understand what I witnessed," she admitted. "My instruments recorded impossible brain activity. Your people exceeded every known biological limit, and then they just stopped." Chen sat down heavily. "The ability to stop is what makes us human, Doctor. Any species can learn to kill. The trick is learning when not to kill. But how do you control something like that? The fury I witnessed should have consumed you completely." Chen was quiet for a long moment. "Because we remember what we're fighting for." Rodriguez wasn't thinking about destroying ships. He was thinking about his daughter's smile. Liu wasn't trying to kill Vorthak. She was trying to save the children she teaches origami. Okafor wasn't hunting for pleasure. He was protecting the beauty he writes about. "And you?" Chen's smile was sad and tired. "I was thinking about all the families on New Geneva who get to have dinner together tonight because we did our job." Kesethera studied her readings again. "The neural pathways in your brains, they're dormant again. But they're still there. You could access that fury again if you needed to." "Yes. Doesn't that terrify you?" Chen considered the question carefully. "Doctor, what terrifies me is the thought of not being able to access it when innocent people need protecting." Over the following days, Kesithara watched the humans slowly return to themselves. Rodriguez started talking about his daughter again. Lau resumed teaching origami to the station's children. Okafor began writing poetry about hope and love. But they were changed. There was a weight in their eyes that hadn't been there before. They had touched something dark and primal in themselves, and the memory of it would stay with them forever. The station commander approached Kesithara on the third day after the battle. "Doctor, I need to ask you about your report. The Confederation Council is demanding a full analysis of what happened here." Kesithara had been dreading this conversation. "What do you want me to tell them?" "The truth. How did 12 humans defeat a fleet of 300 ships?" Kesithara looked at her data again. Brain scans that showed impossible activity. Video recordings of humans moving and thinking beyond normal limits. Weapon modifications that shouldn't have been possible. "I can't publish this," she said finally. "What do you mean?" "Commander, if the galaxy learns what humans are truly capable of when threatened, it will change everything. Every species will either try to ally with humanity or try to destroy them before they become a threat." She gestured at her recordings. "This isn't just military superiority. This is evolutionary advantage on a level that makes humans potentially the most dangerous species in the galaxy. So what do you recommend?" Kesithara made a decision that would haunt her for the rest of her life. "We tell them that the humans won through superior tactics and modified weapons. We don't mention the psychological transformation. We don't explain how they exceeded their biological limits. You want to lie? I want to protect the galaxy from a truth it's not ready to handle." The commander studied her carefully. "And what about you, Doctor? How will you handle this truth?" Kesithara looked out at the stars, knowing that somewhere among them, humans walked and worked and raised families. Knowing that inside each of them was the potential for a fury that could reshape the cosmos. "I'm going home," she said quietly. "I'm retiring from research. I never want to study warriors again." 3 days later, Kesithara left Research Station Omega-7. Her official report became classified at the highest levels of the Confederation government. Her recommendations led to humanity being offered immediate alliance status and trade agreements that made them one of the most prosperous species in the galaxy. But privately, she transmitted a single message to the Confederation Council. Never under any circumstances threaten human children. She returned to her peaceful home world and spent her remaining years tending a small garden. She never spoke publicly about what she had witnessed. When colleagues asked about her sudden retirement, she would only say that she had learned everything she needed to know about the nature of war. But at night, when she looked up at the stars, she remembered 12 humans who had become something beyond biology, beyond evolution, beyond understanding. She remembered the terrible beauty of controlled fury unleashed in defense of innocence, and she understood that she had witnessed something that would change the balance of power. In the galaxy forever, the humans were gardeners, just as Captain Chen had said. But Kesithara had learned the terrifying truth about what gardeners were willing to do to protect their flowers. Her final research note, found after her death, read simply, "I came to study warriors. I found something far more dangerous, protectors who know exactly how much blood their garden needs to bloom. The galaxy would never be the same."